Hi everybody and welcome back to the BizTech Academy and another one of our compilation videos focused on our Excel function series. In this series we look at some common and sometimes not so common functions that are used within Excel. And today we're going to focus on four very common functions but also quite complex, and they are the functions of if, and, or, and not. If you do like this video, it would be great if you can give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and press the alert button. We will be releasing more videos very soon based around these specific functions and how we can combine them into what's called nested functions and perform some rather advanced Excel calculations. Okay, without further ado, let's start with the if function. The if function allows you to make a comparison of two different outcomes after a certain event. So as the statement says here, for example, the if function returns one value if a specified condition is true and another value if it is false. So for example, if you wanted to check if the value in A1 is greater than say 10 and then return a yes if it is and a no if it's not, then you could use the if function to do that. And we'll do that now. We'll try that out, and I'll show you how that is operated on a simple set of numbers. But then we'll also try it in a real life scenario when we look at a small family budget. So if I just paste this column of numbers that I put here, you can see there's just 10 numbers. They're completely and utterly random. There's no pattern, no relevance to them. But let's say in this particular analysis is what we wanted to check if any of these numbers were above, let's say 100. And if they are, we would put a yes next to the number, and if they're not, we would put a no. And in that instance, we would use the if function to do that. And to trigger the if function, and all functions, to be honest with you, is the best option, especially if you've not used them before, is to look and use this little box here where it says fx, and that will open the function builder. And you can see here there's a formula builder. We can search for if. And if we find if then, click on it and then just say insert function. And then the formula builder, and I'll drag it across so you can see it, the formula builder will then open. And this takes you through the logic of the particular function. And what it's saying here is that what is the if? What is it we're trying to check? And what we're trying to do here is we're looking at A1 and saying, is it greater than 100? So if A1, that's the cell we're going to go to, right, is greater than 100, then what if it's true? Well, if it's true, we want to print the word yes. Because it's a text, we have to put that into speech marks or inverted commas. So we put open inverted commas and type in yes. And it should then say, if the value is greater than 100, it will print yes. But if it's false, if it's no, then what happens then? Well, we want it to print no. So again, open the inverted commas and type no. Press done, and you can see here, the answer is no because 20 is obviously less than 100. And then what you can see here, if I click back onto the cell, you can see the actual function in the formula window here. It shows if A1 is greater than 100, then print yes. If not, then print no. Now you could use the formula builder for every single if statement down here if you wanted to. But as you get more proficient and understand how the if function works, you'll probably type the first one in. So let's do that here. Let's go equal if, open parenthesis, if A2 53 is greater than 100, then if it's true, so comma, if it's true, we want to type in yes in inverted commas. If it's false, which again is triggered by a comma, then we want to put no, again in inverted commas. Then close the parenthesis, press enter, and there you go, it says no. Now, of course, as with all formulas and all functions, what you can do here is just copy it down. You don't need to type it in each time. So we'll just use the autofill, double click, and as you can see here, 145 is greater than 100, so the answer is yes. 436 is greater than 100, so therefore the answer is yes, and so on with 634 and 4790. So that shows you the practical application of using the if function and how simple it really is. But if you want to try and apply it to a real life situation, we'll just delete this, and then what we'll do, we'll paste this little table I've created here. And what you've got here is a very, very small sort of family budget. You've got some expenses, mortgage, groceries, car lease, fuel, utilities. You've got the monthly budget, so $1,000 and $500 and so on. And then you've got last month's actual spend. So here you've got 1,063 and so on. What we want to do is we want to do an analysis and use the if function to try and understand which particular expenses have been over budget and which ones are okay. And to do that, we'll use the builder to start with. So you press F and you find the if statement, and then you insert the function, and again I'll drag the builder over here so you can see it. And what we want to do, we want if the actual spend is greater than the budget. So if C2 is greater than B2, then in inverted commas you'll state over budget. And if it's okay, then we'll just type in okay. Press done, and there you go. We just close the formula builder. You can see 1,000 actual spend against the monthly budget of 1,000. That's okay. Let's just copy this down. Now you can see 623 against 500 for groceries is over budget. They must have had a couple of parties or maybe a couple of dinner parties over the month. Car leasing is okay, but fuel is expensive. I think they must have gone on holiday, and they're over budget as well on the utilities. I think that's probably because it's winter and therefore they needed more heating. So what you can see is that, just applying this to a very, very small piece of analysis, if you sort of extrapolated that forward to a large company or a large business, you could quite easily use the if function to do some variance analysis against the spends of the different parts of the business. And obviously use that information then to do some further analysis if anything is overspent and understand why that is and try and correct it. Okay, that's the if function. I hope you found it very useful. It is a very, very widely used function, and I think everybody who's at the beginner stage and starting to move into the intermediate stage should know how to use the if function. Okay, so that's the if function, and what we're going to do now is move on to the and function. I'll show you how that differs to the if function and how it can be applied in real life. I'll see you over there. Okay then, the AND function. As you can see from the screen, the AND function returns true if all of the arguments provided evaluate to true and return false otherwise. This function can be used to test whether multiple conditions are met. That's great, but what does it actually mean? What it actually means is that this particular function, the AND function, will check whether, let's say multiple, but in the scenario we're going to use two particular conditions are in agreement. And if they are in agreement, it will state the phrase true. And if they're not in agreement, so if one of the particular items is not matching the criteria, it will be false. So let's try a real life example here. What I've got here. So if I paste this table of data here that I've created, what you can see here is that you've got names, and you've got college degree and years of experience. And this is a fictitious company that is looking to recruit a new individual, and part of the criteria that they require for that appointment is that the individual both has a college degree and also has at least 3 years experience within the industry. And they've had 5 applications so far. Of course, you'll appreciate that, especially if some of you have been applying for jobs recently, that people get thousands of applications, which is why this particular function is quite efficient in this scenario. So if we want to check here, we want to do an analysis that checks whether they have a college degree and whether their experience is over 2 years, we can use the AND function. What you would do, click on the cell where you want the function to be, and as usual, you can use the builder. So we'll click the F builder, and we'll search for and then we'll click on it, and we'll press insert function. And what I'll do is I'll just drag this across so you can see it. And what this is basically going to ask is what are the factors, and in this case the 2 factors that we want to be true. Okay, so we want B to equal, and in inverted commas we want it to equal yes. And when the logical step 2, we also want the years of experience, so in this case C2, to be greater than 3 years. It's actually greater or equal to 3 years. So once we've done that and we press done, you can see here, and I'll just close the builder for a second, you can see here that in our criteria, yes, John Smith has a college degree, but he doesn't have 3 or more years experience, he only has 2. So it's provided the outcome of false. So if we try this now in the next one, and this time we'll type it in, we won't use the builder. As I mentioned before, I think as you get used to functions more, you're more likely to start by typing the first one and then to just copy them down. So in this case, we'll do equal and, open the parenthesis, and the college degree area must equal and inverted commas again, yes, and then a comma to move on to the next one, and the years of experience must be greater than or equal to 3. Close parenthesis, and then press the enter key. And again, you can see here, Jane Doe, she doesn't have a degree, but she has got 5 years experience. So yes, she has the right experience, but she doesn't have the education, and therefore the outcome is no. If we copy this down to the next one though, you can see here that Mark Clark has a degree and he has 6 years worth of experience, and therefore the outcome is true. Just copy this down to the other cells, and you can see that both of these will be false for the reasons here. For example, Alan doesn't have a degree and Vanessa doesn't have the experience. So Mark is the only one here that you would potentially interview. Now, of course, this could be a very large file, and it's not just the 5 areas here. So once you've done the analysis, you want to pull out just the ones that you would like to interview. And you can do this in a couple of ways. So we'll just put analysis as a title. And what you could do is you could do a filter. So if you highlight all of the headings, and I'll just get out of the way for a moment, you'll see at the top right-hand corner here a menu called Sort and Filter. If you click on that and then press Filter, it will add a drop-down filter here on each of the headings. Now, if we look at Analysis and click down and then deselect False, because we don't want false, and apply the filter, you will only see all of those that are true, and therefore everyone you need to interview. One other way of doing it is to use the if function that we've used in previous lessons, just to confirm whether you want to have an interview. So for example, here you could do equal if, open the parenthesis, if D2 equals false, then, and I'll just do 2 inverted commas to leave it blank. We don't want anything in there. However, if it isn't false and it's true, it's something else, and it can only be true or false, then we'll state in there arrange interview. Close inverted commas, and then obviously the parentheses. And in this case it's blank, but if we copy it down, we can see that for Mark Clark it states arrange interview. And this would then allow us to, if we had much more data, we will be able to see then very clearly the people that we need to interview. And that's the AND function. What we're going to do now is we're going to move on to the OR function. I'll see you over there. Okay then, the OR function. As you can see from the screen, the OR function returns a true value if any of the arguments provided evaluate to true, and returns a false value if that is not the case. So unlike the AND function, which basically looks for 2 or more agreeing conditions, the OR function looks for one being or only one being correct. The best way of explaining this is by example. So if I just paste this table here that I've created earlier, and what you can see here, this is a, let me just drag this across. This is a fictitious company that creates games, and this is a list of their 5 games. It also shows the profit margin for each game and the sales volume that it sold in the last month. And what we want to do is we want to undertake a marketing campaign, but we'll only undertake that marketing campaign and that promotion if one of the products has either a profit margin greater than 30%, or the volumes are greater than 1,000. So to do that, we can use the OR function. So what we'll do, and we'll click on the cell that we want to start this on, so we'll go to the function builder, and then we'll drag that across so that you can see it. And you can see we're going to choose OR, and then we're going to say insert function. And you've got 2 logical steps here because we're looking for 2 different conditions to satisfy. So the first one is the profit margin greater than 0.3, which is the 30% that we said right at the beginning, or, and we click on logical 2, is the sales volume greater than 1,000. And as we've said, if either the profit margin is greater than 30% or the volume is greater than 1,000, then we want this to return a true value. So we'll just press done now. And you can see this says false. And why did it say false? Well, because 25% is less than 30% and 500 is less than 1,000. We'll just close the builder and we'll try one manually. So what we'll do this time is just type it in. I think I've mentioned before that the more you become proficient with functions, you'll probably forget the builder and just type in the function you're using for the first time before you probably copy and paste it down. So in this scenario, we're going to go if equal or, open parenthesis, is the profit margin greater than 0.3, comma, to move on to the next logical step, is the sales volume, C3, is that greater than 1,000? And again, close the parenthesis, press return, and again it's false because 16% is less than 30% and 900 is less than 1,000. If we just copy this down though, you can see for the next three, it's true. So for the Chief of Texas game, 57% and the volumes of 1,100 are greater than our conditions. Captains of California is the same. And Friends of Florida, they only have a 10% profit margin, but they sell a lot of units, 5,000. So again, we would like to add those to the promotion. And that shows you how to use the OR function. Now, what you would want to probably do now, especially if you had maybe 1,000 products that you want to do this analysis in, you'd want to just be able to view this more efficiently and not just see a big list of false and trues. Because again, if you have a large number, it becomes a bit confusing. And you can do this in a couple of ways. One is through adding a filter, and I've shown that in other videos, but I'll do it again in a moment. And the other one is just to add an if statement, putting a condition in there stating what you would do next, an action if you like. So if we start with adding a filter, I'll just get out of the way. And what we'll do, we'll just add a title here, analysis. We'll highlight all the headings. And to add the filter, we go to the top right-hand corner here, where it says sort and filter. Press the drop-down menu and click filter. And as you can see, there's a little arrow, little drop-down menu on each of the headings. For the analysis, we just want to click the heading, deselect false, because we don't want false showing, and press apply. And then what you've got here is you've got all your games that comply with the OR function, or comply that are expected to go into the marketing campaign. If we just undo that, so what we can do now is we can just do this in a slightly different way, and we can create an action and use an if statement. So what we'll do is go equal if, open the parenthesis, if the analysis equals false. Note that you don't need inverted commas here because this is an output of a function, not a text. If it is false, then what we want to do nothing. So we'll just put two inverted commas and make it blank. However, if it's true, we want it to say add to marketing campaign and close the inverted commas and also close the parentheses. Press enter, and you can see because this is false, it's blank. But if we copy it down, you can see that everything that is true says add to marketing campaign. And if you imagine this being 1,000 lines of different products, you could then scroll down quite easily, see what which ones need to be added to marketing campaign, and also add another filter if you wanted to. Okay, and that's the OR function. I hope you found that useful. Let's now move on to the final lesson, and we'll look at the not function. Okay, everybody, the not function. As it says here, the not function is like a button that changes a yes to a no or a no to a yes. But what does that mean? Well, we'll use a practical example as always, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to paste this little table here. And what this table shows, it shows some order IDs, 001 down to 005, and it shows a shipping status. So this particular company has a number of orders, and some of them are shipped, and some of them are pending. And of course, this table only has 5 items. In a normal business, this could be hundreds, and if not thousands of items. And in many cases, you want to know which items have been shipped and which items require expediting or further investigation to get them shipped. We'll label the column action. And then what we'll do is we'll click onto the cell where we want the first analysis done. So if we then open the builder, as we always do with the first one, and click on the F here, we'll drag that across, and we'll find not, and then we'll insert the function. Now what we actually want to check is that if the function is shipped, because shipped is okay, then that's not an issue. So we want that to be false. We don't want to be an issue if it's shipped. So basically, you do equal, and you click on the cell, so B2, and equal, and if it says shipped, then we expect the outcome to be false because we don't mind, we don't care if it's shipped. It's only if it's actually pending and therefore not shipped, true, it's not shipped, that we have an issue. So if we now press done, you can see here, and we'll close the builder, that shipped equals false. Okay. So now that we've used the builder, we'll do this manually. As I mentioned before, most times once you get used to functions, you'll probably type the first one in manually. So you would go equal, not, open the parenthesis, and again, if B2 is equal to shipped, then we want it to be false because we have nothing else to do. But on this case, it's true. It is unequal to shipping. It's pending. Copy that down, and then you can see all the pending items are true and all the shipped items are false. So what you could do is you could then filter that, and I've shown you that in previous lessons. You could add a filter onto here to highlight the true items, and then you know you need to do something with them. But I find sometimes that quite confusing. If you, as an analyst, have then been asked to do this investigation and then provide some actions and report that over to whoever is going to deal with the issues, what you would then probably do is put something in a little bit more plain English. So I would then add an action heading, and I would then also put an if statement in, converting these falses and trues to some sort of plain English. So for example, if you then go equal if, open the parenthesis, if that equals false, right, then we know from this analysis that you actually don't want to do anything. So we'll just do two inverted commas to leave it blank. That's all you need to do. But if it's not false, then we know it's going to be pending, and therefore we need to expedite it and get it shipped out. So you'd want to escalate to shipping. So in that case, we'll do the inverted commas again, and now we'll type in escalate to shipping, the shipping department. Close the parenthesis, press enter, and as you can see, it's blank here because it's actually shipped. But if we copy this down, you can see that where it's pending and where we put a true in there, we escalate it to shipping and we do something with it. It's an action. Okay, so this is the not function. It's a little bit confusing in the first instance because it's counterintuitive. You're trying to say no to something that you want something done to, which doesn't really make sense. There's other ways of doing this, but some people like to use this. To be honest with you, I don't use it that often, but it has been used in the past and can be useful. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this short series of videos. Like I say, we will be doing others, and we'll also show you how to combine some of these functions together into more complex scenarios. If you enjoyed the videos, please give us a thumbs up, press the subscribe button and the alert button for new ones, and in the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.